Hello, everyone. This is Amanda Coulong with This Week in Cloud Computing, and I have my voice back this week.
It's nice to hear your voice this time, Amanda.
Thank you.
Last week you were very quiet.
I think you liked me being mute.
No, not really. I like having you talking, and
Okay.
Mr. Greenberg there needed a little bit of rebuking here and there.
This is true. Everyone, this is Mark Jeffrey, if you did not know, my co-host. Thank you for being here.
Hey, my pleasure as always.
We've got a lot of things happening this week. First off, if you haven't noticed already, we have a new site, thisweekin.com, that features all of our shows across the board, so please check that out. And we've got a lot of stuff happening. If you would like to join the chat, please do so on the site as well. Just log in there. You can also join us on Twitter at TWiCloudComp and the hashtag cloud. So one last thing too, obviously we've got some great sponsors. We have Verticore.
Yes.
And we also have Storm on Demand.
Storm on Demand. I'm sporting my
He's sporting the
very
shirt.
fancy, yes, actually from the normal camera. Yeah, there we go. You can see my Storm on Demand t-shirts.
And our little men.
There's like a little storm thing. So if I want to be Superman, I can do this and fly away. Anyway.
So you're probably wondering where our guests are. They're joining us virtually today. So we've got a great show lined up. We're going to be speaking with Treb Ryan, who is the CEO of OpSource. So Treb will be getting to you shortly, and also Eugene Steinberg, who is the CTO of Grid Dynamics. But first, we have the news. So. Let's begin with story with Eucalyptus Systems. They've had a shift in management. So they've replaced Woody Rollins with former MySQL chief executive Martin Mikos, who was at EIR Benchmark Capital.
Wow.
Now, Mikos is being tasked with turning Eucalyptus into a big business, which likely means raising more money. Now, word on the street has it the company is looking for about a $100 million valuation. That's quite a hefty valuation.
That's pretty big.
So the question is, and I will throw this out there to both you, Treb, and Eugene also, if you would like to chime in, how much is Eucalyptus really worth? And does the addition of Mikos add enough value? Why don't we start with you, Treb?
Yeah, I think the addition of Martin's great. I mean, I worked with him over at MySQL and knows how to take an open source company and really make it a standard. With that addition, yeah, 100 million, sure. We just saw 3Terra, which does a commercial version of kind of a cloud management platform, get picked up by CA for 30 times revenue. Now, no one really knows what that revenue was, but word is there was 100 million, if not 100 million, somewhere close to that. And Eucalyptus has probably a far greater reach in that environment, and with a Series A type, a Class A type CEO like Martin, I don't see them having a real problem getting that type of pre-money.
What was it? So they raised initially. They raised 5.5 million from Benchmark.
From Benchmark and BV Capital.
Right. So now, how long has it been since they raised that round, and and basically this this valuation? Do we know the answer to that, or?
I'm not sure. What about you, Eugene? What do you think?
Thinking about Eucalyptus, we tried that technology a couple of years ago. And it is really interesting technology. From my perspective, currently Eucalyptus has a very interesting position and is becoming a real player on the private cloud market. However, this company will experience really big concurrency on this market because, for example, there are other companies which was recently acquired by a company called Computer Associates. So this basically means that really serious players start to look into this market, and they have their channels which will allow them to move the adoption of private cloud solutions, their private cloud solutions, into large enterprises. This will allow them to kind of easily leverage their channels, and Eucalyptus, I don't think that they have such a channels, and that means that they will have a hard time competing with these companies on the open market.
Do we know how they arrived at that 100 million valuation number, though? Do you know the answer to that?
It has more digits in it than 99
million.
No,
I don't know how they got this valuation. They have pretty interesting technology, but this is based on a lot of open source components. And,
right.
I have a hard time understanding how that bunch of open source components can link up with valuation.
Sorry, Eugene, what kind of revenue are they doing? Do we have any idea of that?
Maybe 5 million, maybe 10 maximum.
All right, so this would be a significant, this is like a 20x or 10x,
Exactly.
revenue valuation, which is pretty damn high.
And you've got to consider.
Really reasonable for me.
Yeah, and you also have to consider too. I mean, there are a lot of players in this market. In terms of the open source space.
Right.
What are they going to do in terms of that? Lots of big competitors, and not only that, but Eucalyptus is giving away their core software, but they're making money from add-ons and proprietary extensions.
Yeah, you can make a business out of an open source. That's been proven before,
Right.
so it can be done. But the question is 100 million, is it really worth that? And my guess is no, but this is a frothy market.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, as we discussed on every show, there's a lot of action around cloud computing, and they're clearly a cloud company. So
Yeah.
I think they're getting the lift from the bubble, would be my guess.
True. Well, let's move on to story number 2. There was a CIO.com survey recently where IT pros are actively engaged and confirming strong business interest in analytics, cloud, and collaboration technologies, but not everyone is deploying cloud. So as it specifically relates to cloud computing, 57% of the 405 respondents surveyed have analytics on their radars or piloting technology, but only 15% have deployed cloud technology. So the question is, what's the holdup? Are we not ready for the cloud? Is there something that we're missing here? Treb, what do you think?
Well, this is still really brand new stuff, right? I mean, we've only had cloud, and I think when we talk about cloud, we should probably be very specific. Cloud infrastructure, the ability to get resources such as network and storage and systems over the cloud, as opposed to cloud applications and the like, which I think if you took the broader cloud would be much bigger. But on cloud infrastructure, it's still a very new product, and a lot of what's out there is very immature. I mean, I think that from a perspective of a corporation that's used to having control over what they're doing, that's worried about security and performance, what's out there today is still brand new. And, while probably most believe they will adopt it at some point, they're waiting for the tools to get a little more mature before they jump all the way in.
True. All right. Next story we have, according to another survey conducted by Vansom Bourne, 52% of 200 CIOs polled said they intended to make changes to their existing data center environments, but just 18% of those wanted to make changes, planned to do so, and to enable the cloud. So seems like we've got a trend going on here. So the next question here is cloud computing just a fad at this point? Mark?
Well, I mean, I don't think we'd be doing a show if we thought it was just a fad. So I'm going to say no. I'm going to go out on a little limb here and say no, I don't think it's a fad.
Right.
I think that, as we discussed almost every show, it's the definition of what cloud computing is changes depending on who you are. A lot of people tend to cloud wash their products.
Yes.
But I think in general, the trend of virtualizing your infrastructure to someone who actually has the hardware sitting on their site, that's going to continue and going to get bigger. Microsoft announced last week they're betting the company on the cloud. It's something that's not a fad. It's here to stay in some form.
Exactly. Just a quick side tangent here. Eugene, how do you define the cloud?
Well, basically this is a most complex question. Well, basically the cloud is basically a synergy of many well-known technologies which work together to offer much more flexible, manageable, and inexpensive IT services and IT infrastructure. This is a real disruption. All the rest, which is called cloud computing, is basically the icing on top of a
Sure.
Right.
And don't worry, Treb, we'll get to you on that question in a bit as well. But to move on, I want to go to the next story. For many workloads, the cloud appears to be replacing the grid. So let me give you one example.
Yeah, what does that mean? I actually read this and I wasn't sure. What's the difference between the cloud and the grid?
Well, exactly. That's a whole separate question we could get into. But for this specific one,
well, let me just kind of try to answer the question: what is the difference between the cloud and the grid?
Okay, go ahead, Eugene.
So, in terms of grid computing is well known for kind of decades, and it basically operates on the level of sending a workload to particular engines which reside somewhere in the internet and can process this workload. But the level on which the grid computing works is basically the level which we are relying on the particular software which is installed on those engines. And the main difference between that and the cloud is that cloud is operated in fully automated provisioning of those engines. And it relies heavily on top of virtualization. And basically the virtual machine itself becomes the engine on which the workload runs, as opposed to in grid computing, the special software which needs to be installed, provisioned, and configured that can process the workload. So this is the main difference between grid and cloud.
Got it. So the grid is something like when NASA put out their the SETI at Home project, right?
Yes.
They have these huge data sets.
Yeah, SETI at Home is the grid.
So that would be
Amazon
grid computing.
is
So just to make sure everyone's on the same page. So SETI at Home was that you basically install the screensaver on your machine. NASA would chop up the data that it was receiving from the giant antenna arrays it had around the world and give you a little parcel of it that when your computer was inactive, you weren't doing Microsoft Word or whatever, you're just sort of sitting there and a screensaver was running, it would start chomping the data. And it would assemble, then when it was done chomping it, it would basically send it back to NASA, say, yes, I found a signal, I found aliens, or whatever. Largely not, but if they discovered a signal of interest, it would be highlighted at NASA's end. So there's a grid of these computers. So that's different from the cloud, where you basically, we've discussed a million times today, so I won't get into that. But nonetheless, so basically the thesis here is that the cloud is replacing the grid.
Yes.
So
with
please
that
continue.
in mind, well, this is good because we are an educational show to really break apart cloud computing. We try. So what we're getting at here, consider research-driven cloud computing, for instance. The European Space Agency, which is using Amazon EC2 for the data processing needs of its Gaia mission, which is set, I think, launching in 2012. They're using 40 gigabytes per night that Gaia will generate that would have cost $1.5 million using local resources. But research suggests it could cost about $500,000 using EC2.
Oh, wow.
So that's a huge difference. So the question then is, will cloud services displace high-end supercomputers or replace the grid? What do you think, Treb?
Yeah, I'd probably throw this back to Eugene, as he knows the grid better than I do and how it's used for those kind of highly specialized. But for batch processing, and for large jobs, the cloud definitely has its place. I mean, we're seeing that in our own environments, and I know across the board that if you need an undifferentiated amount of computing for a period of time, the cloud's often much faster and easier than pulling up the physical servers. If you're doing a heavy load over a long period of time, and you have a specific need for some specialized software across that load, and that load's going to be high over an extended period of time, months or of time or later, sometimes those economics don't work as well. And so I always think it's tough to talk about the cloud just in terms of economics, because sometimes it's fabulously better in economics, and sometimes it's more of a toss-up. It might be better to own the equipment.
Okay. Eugene, what about you? Do you think that cloud computing is going to replace the grid?
Well, actually, from my perspective, cloud computing can be viewed as something as a very convenient way to deploy a grid on something. So this is more complementary things than kind of directly substitutable things. So the cloud computing, well, in our company we used cloud computing infrastructures on public cloud providers and on some private cloud to deploy really large-scale applications, but we always used some sort of grid computing middleware to drive the actual workload. So those things are complementary and cannot substitute each other.
Yeah, I was going to make the point earlier that actually a lot of these companies that we've been talking about that are getting acquired essentially have implemented grid technology in their cloud offering, and that's how they provide it.
Right.
So so you could, they're the same thing in some respects.
Yeah.
So.
Grid technology in the cloud.
Yes.
Well, let's move on. Story number 6.
I think we're at 5 actually.
Or 5, maybe. You're right. See, I don't even have my numbers straight today. Canonical, the company that is behind the Ubuntu Linux distribution, has announced the official launch of the Ubuntu One music store. So, I mean, this is pretty big. I mean...
No, what is it? So basically, Is it like iTunes or?
But it's not closed off.
So anyone can go in. So anyone can put their music up, and anyone can. Now, by closed off, you mean you don't have to be a record company.
Exactly.
So if I'm just a musician, I can just upload whatever I want into it and sell it for whatever price I want. Okay.
And so, I mean, you've got this young cloud startup, and Datamation predicted that they would be a hot cloud startup this year. Would you say that something like this piece of news really backs that up? Were they right? Do you think this is going to be a big deal this year? What do you think, Treb?
You know, I like Ubuntu. It's a desktop operating environment, and now they're a cloud environment, and now they're a music store. You know, that's a lot of products from a young startup, completely different areas. You know, I have to admit, I didn't get far enough down in their email to say that Ubuntu's doing music. And that's probably going to be one of my funnier stories of the week. You know, you take a look at Amazon, who also, I guess they're figuring if Amazon can do cloud and do music, then why can't they? They've had a hard time competing with iTunes in that environment. It would be tough, you would think, for a company that was focused on making what was supposed to be a great desktop experience and is now kind of branched out into some really interesting things in the cloud, would also have the media pull to grab the music store business as well.
I mean, the other piece of this, too, is with Ubuntu One, you can also store other kinds of information, too. So documents and images and things like that. So they're kind of spreading themselves out beyond even just the music piece to compete with a Google and you know, Zoho, the likes of that.
Well, it's interesting because Amazon, you know, Amazon basically built out their music store and their media store, call it media in all its formats, books, etc. And then they were just sort of done. You know, there was really nowhere else to expand. And so they looked at their assets and said, well, where else can we expand? Well, we've built this great infrastructure. Why don't we rent it? That works for us. We built it for ourselves initially, but why don't we turn around and rent it? Ubuntu's basically done the opposite. It's the inverse play. They built the infrastructure for us and said, oh, this now allows us to get into content and distribution of content. So it's interesting from that perspective that sort of one is equivalent to the other in some respects. Although I do agree that it's, you know, from a business perspective, having focus on all those three areas is really schizophrenic for any company. So.
And what do you think, Eugene? Do you think they'll succeed at this, or are they getting a little too scatterbrained?
Well, from my perspective, I'm not quite understand how the fact that Canonical deployed their analog of iTunes Store is related to basically cloud theme. So in any case, then every solution which can store some information on the internet in this case becomes a cloud, right? And a lot of companies try to currently kind of ride this hype and utilize that as a kind of to position themselves as a cloud company. The cloud, the storage in the cloud becomes, or storage in the cloud or any other service in the cloud becomes a cloud if it becomes a middleware for other applications which can use that as a service to build on top of that something new and interesting. And if you have just music store or just file store in the cloud without an API or without a layer which will allow you to build something on top of that, this is just a file storage and nothing more.
Very good point.
That's my perspective.
The real benefit is file storage. There you go.
A bad point.
All right, so story number 6. This one's just kind of a fun one I had to throw in there. If you look at all of the information assets that Google is investing in the cloud, you have results, you have ads, you have real-time index.
You mean search results? So search results.
Yeah, search results. Gmail, documents, files, books, filters, health transactions. You have all of these things that they're investing in the cloud. So are they becoming the cloud? Will search just become a feature of Google, and will they literally own the cloud? Mark, what do you think?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of talk lately that Google is becoming. I mean, there was an article I read this morning that Google's becoming a country with this whole stuff that's going on with China. They pulled out. They're almost acting like a miniature nation. And their ability to sort of influence world politics. So, so I think if they can become a miniaturized nation, I think that they can certainly. It depends what you mean. Are they becoming the cloud? I don't think they're going to be the
Right.
only cloud provider.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody thinks that there's going to be just a one ring for the cloud that
No,
to
one ring,
rule
but the
them all.
chat room
Yes.
says there should be one ring.
Well, I do know that they're saying there could be only one, which is Highlander, which is very
This
different.
is true.
So, it's one of my favorite movies. So, anyway. So in other words, I don't think Google is going to be squishing everyone out of the cloud business. Of course, they're going to be a major player. I think that's just obvious.
All right. Well, I think it's time to give some sponsors some love. What do you think,
I think
Mark?
absolutely. Always happy to give sponsors some love. So this week we're going to start with Verticore. So this weekend is actually hosted on Verticore. So they're gracious. They've really been awesome. Just in terms of the support, in terms of the uptime. I mean, just everything we would hope for is there. So Verticore.com is where they're found. If your cloud hosting provider is letting you down, then we definitely encourage you to take a look at Verticore. They're more secure and more reliable than other like cloud vendors. Managed private cloud solution can easily replace your current IT infrastructure, eliminate your IT pains. No more IT guys running around telling you no. Just do what you want. Completely avoid the cost and hassle of maintaining your own equipment. Nobody likes all wires and boxes and things. Just don't worry about it. Just basically log in and set your own cloud up. You can deliver 100% uptime to your end users, configure and deploy your resources in just minutes. Basically, they give you a little panel. You type in what you want, and off you go. You're off to the races. Your private cloud is hosted in the most advanced and secure data center, so you don't have to worry about somebody breaking in or it breaking down. You don't have to worry about the physical equipment. Best-in-class hardware and software, and it gives you access to virtually unlimited bandwidth. So Verticore's team of experts monitor and maintain your private cloud 24/7 by 365, freeing your internal staff to concentrate on supporting only your applications and projects that can help grow your company. Verticore is at verticore.com.
And of course, we have to give shout outs to our sponsors. They really support us here. They support new media, and we wouldn't be able to give you this great content without them.
Yeah, the show is not possible without these folks. So heartfelt thanks to both our sponsors and NetDNA as well.
Of course, and NetDNA.
And actually in the chat room, they're saying Viticore. It's not Viticore, it's Verticore.
Verticore.
I'll type it in right now so everyone knows where
Yes,
we're
everyone in the
about.
chat room, make sure you check out Verticore, and he'll be adding it shortly.
There we go.
I think we're having a little bit of a technical difficulty with Treb, so I think we're going to jump straight into a discussion with you then, Eugene. I would really like to, do a warm welcome here with you again. Eugene, again, is the CTO of Grid Dynamics. And Grid Dynamics, according to Gartner, the analyst firm, is the most experienced scalability and cloud consulting organization. That's pretty hefty there. When did that analyst report come out, Eugene? You there?
Oh, basically, this year, this report came out this year, I believe.
Congratulations on that. So Eugene has, you have a PhD, you're the CTO for Grid Dynamics, and you've got quite an impressive background here. I mean, you've specialized in scalable architectures, as well as for applying emerging cloud computing technology in enterprises. You've got experience at extreme transaction processing systems, design, and a large variety of scalable commercial and open source middleware too. So that's, we keep talking a bit about middleware here. How did you get into this business in the first place, Eugene?
Well, we started that company starting with a project with PayPal to build a large-scale fraud detection system for them. And back then, we had not a deep kind of knowledge in all the cloud computing and grid computing things, and basically we started to kind of from solving very, very pragmatic and practical problems on how they are really a scalable system. And the system which can detect fraud in real time with low latency and high throughput. And this was a very, very exciting project with a huge company which has a really, really a huge workload. And this allows us to build a really, really relevant experience in how would you build a scalable system.
Right.
So
for me personally, it was the very excited opportunity to apply a lot of kind of theoretical computer science knowledge and some practical knowledge in building scalable systems, which I've got to real massive scalable problem.
So two questions very quickly. First one is, when was this that you started doing this project?
Right.
Well, it was 2006.
Okay, so fairly recently, not like back in 2000 or even,
Right.
I was just
But
curious.
still 4 years. And I guess
Yeah.
one point that I wanted to raise with this, Eugene, a lot of people keep saying cloud, 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 starting last year, but really, cloud in different iterations has been going on for a number of years now.
Yeah. Well, he started
Yes,
Grid.
actually, a lot of people saying what you can do in the cloud, and very few people say what we did in the cloud. So in this situation, we kind of one of the few consulting companies which really did something real in the space of cloud computing and the space of scalable mission-critical applications.
I think you're. I think you're.
Cloud. Sorry.
I was going to say, I think your application is very interesting. So you basically, PayPal came to you and said, and I'm going to try to characterize it just to make sure we're all on the same page here. PayPal came to you, they've got a problem with fraud, right? So people are people are stealing money from each other, entering in false, Visa accounts, et cetera, and actually beating the system and getting money out of it in various ways. And so with these, sorry, Eugene, what?
This is not exactly the vertical problem with fraud. This is a problem of scalability. And this is a problem which algorithms which PayPal used to kind of detect and prevent fraud didn't scale well.
Oh, it didn't scale well. Okay.
We had, and workloads which we had in that company are really huge. It's one of the biggest financial institutions in the world, and they required to go in a little different, or maybe not little, but revolutionarily different paradigms of moving the application to grid computing infrastructures, to be able to harness hundreds of machines and to distribute their data, to deliver the required throughput and performance and latency. So that was the core kind of expertise and core value which we brought to our customers.
So So being able to do fraud detection effectively, you need massive scale. There's no way to sort of do it at a smaller scale. That's the biggest.
You will have a massive amount of transactions.
So the reason for the scale in your end is that there's
of financial transactions per second, and you will need to deliver the data to those transactions with about 50 millisecond time and well, and that's challenges in current stack of technologies. And you should be very, very clear to partition your workload and your data to satisfy that requirement.
One thing I wanted to jump into a little bit, Eugene, you've got some pretty impressive marquee cloud projects that you've done for Macy's, for Seagate, for Cisco. With these large companies, what were they looking for? What are some of the consistent questions that you get across the board from them?
Yes, so those large companies, they are basically for long looking into the cloud computing, and we're trying to find their path to kind of try the cloud computing in different applications we have. The first and most simple use case we implemented and deployed for some of our customers is called Cloud for Quality Assurance. So in this solution, we basically can deploy their particular enterprise technology, which is basically a cluster of machines which serve, for example, a large e-commerce website on the cloud, to allow quality assurance people from that company to deploy on demand any particular version of their system to make all kinds of testing upon all that. So that streamlined a lot the process of quality assurance in our customer. The second use case which we deployed is basically some of our clients in financial industry. We are very interested to process their very large Excel worksheets on the grid and cloud environment.
Really? Excel worksheets?
I've never thought of a cloud Excel worksheet.
Financial analysts, they think in Excel, and of course,
Interesting.
A lot of financial institutions have that huge Excel worksheets which takes hours to recalculate. Yeah. And they are very, very interested to be able to run that workload on the grid, not on their own workstation. And this is something which we've done with help of with partnership with Microsoft. We've done that for some financial institutions.
Yeah, I was actually curious how, in fact, you went about doing that, because I don't think Microsoft just allows you to rip open Excel and do it, basically distribute its file system all over the place.
We are technology partners with Microsoft. We are working very close with this Microsoft development team to build their solutions around ability to run massive Excel workloads on the cloud.
Interesting. Do you think you'll be productizing that anytime soon?
Yes, we are productizing that.
I would think so.
Oh, very good to know. I'll have to keep in touch about that. Well, I want to do another quick sponsor break because I think we hear something here in the studio. Do you?
I believe that we do. I feel my voice getting louder, more superfied, if you will. Yes. Storm on Demand. Storm on Demand, which I'm wearing, by the way.
And Storm on Demand.
Right here. It's an infrastructure as a service cloud computing platform that is powerful enough to replace dedicated servers. Storm on Demand is a proprietary cloud platform designed by Liquid Web. They're one of the largest web hosting providers with over 12 years of experience. Easier and less expensive than other leading cloud providers. Features include server setup in minutes, easy scaling, backup and restoration capabilities, and pay-as-you-go utility-style billing. Some of their options: cPanel, Fantastico, Ubuntu again, Debian, CentOS, fully managed servers, private networking, and much, much more. Also, a very cool. Oh, we didn't make our little guys go across. Wait.
Oh, our guys.
We forgot to do. So make the guy go across.
Here's your guy.
Oh, we got a guy. Okay. Also, they have cool guys.
See?
A big feature.
Cool
make
guys.
them go across. Right. Storm on Demand can be found at stormondemand.com. So go there if you're looking for a cloud solution. We suggest listen to our friends at Storm on Demand, at stormondemand.com, and of course Verticore too. Give them both a shot if you're looking for something like this.
Exactly. Thanks for putting up with our silliness, everyone, but we love our sponsors.
We do.
So I want to jump into a discussion now with you, Treb. So Treb Ryan is the CEO of OpSource, and you're focused on cloud operations coming from the SaaS space mainly, correct, originally?
Yeah, we originally, our primary customer base is software as a service companies, from traditional companies moving into SaaS like Adobe and SAP to dedicated software as a service companies from big guys like Taleo, and exactly down to startups like JobVite.
And now one piece of interesting news already here is that your OpSource cloud is out of beta. So what does that mean for people now? What can they expect with your cloud?
Well, OpSource Cloud was our first opportunity for enterprise customers to use the OpSource infrastructure directly and to start using it for enterprise compute purposes. In the past, anytime they were using us through one of our customers, such as Adobe or BMC. But now they can actually, get the best of the cloud, the immediate availability, the highly incrementalized pricing, the ability to use APIs for burstability and expandability, but get that in a far more kind of enterprise fashion. So we did a lot of things around private networking within the cloud, offering enterprise tools such as VMware and Microsoft, doing user controls. And what the SLA is really about, when we came out of beta, was that we wanted to put our money where our mouth was. We figured if we're going to spend a lot of money putting in the type of redundancy that's gone into place with the way we're using multiple systems for the virtual machines, if we're going to make private networks that allow people to have layer 2 10 gigabit connection between their virtual instances within the cloud, if we were going to offer support for even someone who's only paying us 7 cents an hour and have live customer support, we should stand behind that. And the SLA was a way of saying that. We were the first to offer a latency SLA between the systems and say any of your systems can talk to each other in less than a millisecond, so you can do complex applications. We were the first to offer a guaranteed response from live support and on emergency response, be back on top of it within 30 minutes. for emergency situations. And with all the money we spent on instance availability and really building out a enterprise class architecture and infrastructure, we also agreed to give 100% uptime on your instance availability, saying once you have an instance going, it's always going to be going. It doesn't mean it'll be perfect from our side, but we're in the same boat you are if there's any problems.
Treb, would you think that, or would you agree that every cloud computing provider should offer a 100% uptime SLA?
I don't actually think so.
Okay.
I think you need to look at who you're targeting and how you're targeting them and what they're going to pay. I think what we see is current cloud prices today. If you're paying the equivalent of 3 or 4 cents for a CPU and a couple pennies for a gigabyte of RAM and 300 a penny for a gigabyte of storage, yeah, you should give that kind of SLA. The fact is we know that we can do that in this environment. Does it mean that someone's not going to want to lower availability and pay less than that? Sure. I think if you want to offer lower levels of service, and you're willing to charge less for that, people may not need that same type of availability. But at the price points we're seeing today, which is funny because just a year or two ago that seemed so cheap, and now we have people, literally going 3/100ths of a penny an hour for a gigabyte of storage. Oh my gosh, I want that completely SLA'd. I think that that's something they should expect from their vendors at today's price points.
Mm-hmm. Now, you guys also have achieved your SAS 70 Type 2 audit. Is that correct?
Yes, we actually have a number of audits. It's part of it. That really comes out of the
Wait, what is that?
Exactly.
We should explain what these things are a little bit.
Exactly.
I don't think
We
everyone
talked
knows.
a little bit about audits on the show, but yeah, if you could clarify for everyone.
Maybe I don't know either, so I'd like to know.
There's a number of different agencies that will go out and set of standards that are based on how you deliver your services, the way you encrypt your data, the security put within your data center, where someone is effectively coming in and you're stating, this is how I'm going to secure the customer's data, this is how I'm going to lock down the data center, this is how I'm going to manage the systems from the application level down to the OS level. And by doing so, you get a stamp of approval that this is qualified to run certain types of applications. The SAS 70 is often used for financial applications, for people who need to get Sarbanes-Oxley. PCI is the one that's usually used for consumer credit information.
Got it.
For medical data, it's either HIPAA or CFR Part 11. If you want to do business in Europe, you usually need to get a European Safe Harbor certification. And in cloud infrastructure, and using cloud to get servers and storage, there really hasn't been a lot of that yet. Matter of fact, cloud infrastructure has been pretty insecure up to now. But for cloud applications, SaaS applications, the world we come from where people are already putting business data out there, it's pretty much a requirement that you have at least one of those certifications, and often 3, 4, or 5. I mean, I tell you, we get audited. I personally just got background checked by the Canadian government.
Really?
I passed, by the way. Much
Good.
nicer.
I was going to say, I hope you didn't fail.
I guess it didn't make it north of the border, but yeah. I mean, these are the types of things for people, to get comfortable with using the cloud, which we actually believe can be quite a bit more secure than corporate data centers. You don't have to worry about laptops and security zones, and all of my employees are background checked, and including me now, by the Canadian government specifically. That you can use the cloud with confidence. You're going to have to show people that, and much like companies get financial audits, so investors can believe their financials are on the up and up. These types of SAS 70 and PCI audits allow people to understand that their data is being treated the same way.
Sure. Now, Treb, one thing we've talked about on the show here before is auditing, and the fact that there's no real standardization when it comes to the auditing process. You can have one guy come in and give you one certification or not, and then the next guy comes in and gives you a completely different report. So would you say there's still a need in the market right now, as far as cloud computing in general goes, to have a more standardized audit process for cloud?
And that part about auditing not being consistent from one to the next is true with certain types of audits. So the SAS 70, which is the most common and usually the first one people get, the audit's consistent, but they're auditing you against your stated process and procedures. It's many ways like an ISO certification that you say you're going to do something a certain way, and then they audit you do that. Things like PCI and HIPAA have a far more rigid set of requirements around how it's done, and so not only do you have to show you're doing it, but you have to do it a certain way. Will you need one of those for cloud? I think it's really going to be more application dependent because, medical data may have a different set of requirements than consumer credit card data. What I do encourage, and what any good provider should do, is provide you a copy of their audits on request.
That's a really good point.
The fact is, if everybody can do it differently like they do in SAS 70, then you should be able to show what your SAS 70 audit is there. And for us, we not only show our customers what our SAS 70 audit is, we show our customers' customers. So anybody who's using us who wants to go to their customer, because we're getting their application certified as well as our environment, and it's a little different, we'll actually send their end customer, whether it's a GE or Boeing or whoever their end customer is, or Country Computer in Scotland, a copy of our SAS 70 audit so they can review to make sure it follows their procedures.
Gotcha. Now, one thing I wanted to highlight with you specifically, Treb, you sit on the software executive board at the SIA. What's some of the discussion that's happening around SaaS at that level?
Yeah, it's funny. SIA has been one of the better, more progressive companies in the space, our organizations in space, and understanding what was going on with SaaS and where it's coming and what's happening. I think a lot of what really is coming around cloud for software companies, the first was, what does it really mean to be software as a service? And initially, everybody thought it was about taking your application and just charging monthly for it. And I think that now within the SIA and with most people in the space, what they realize, it's really about the cloud, right? It's really about the internet. You asked earlier what my definition of the cloud was. It's that little squiggly drawing at the top of the architecture diagram that represents the internet.
Jason Droege said that same thing last week.
Yes, Jason said
because that's how we drew it. And what's really going on here is the internet is getting used for business purposes now. It was essentially a consumer data, a consumer tool. Is now being used for businesses, which is not a big surprise because most people under the age of 30 who are in businesses, their only technology tool is the internet, or their prime technology tool, and they're looking at client server, the stuff that came out of my generation. It looks like green screens and mainframes. So what the SIA and the companies in there are realizing, you can't just take what you did in client server, charge for it monthly and have it be SaaS, right? It's got to be truly in the cloud. It's got to be a true web application. Take advantage of that immediate availability, the API level capability to integrate that with other applications. The ubiquitous access that comes along with the cloud. If you really want to be successful there, now people pretty much understand that. Now they're mostly just figuring out how to get their sales numbers up.
True. Well, on the consumer side, really quickly, would you say that the general consumer's understanding of the cloud is just SaaS at this point?
I think the consumer understands cloud better than the I mean, you ask my 5-year-old what the cloud is, and he can tell you automatically what the cloud is. What he can't tell you is what physical media is.
Wait. What does your 5-year-old say the cloud is? I'm interested in
I want to know.
The 5-year-old definition of cloud computing.
For him, it's just computing. I tell this story all the time. He was one day sitting on YouTube. I've got 3 kids, which means we stopped raising the third one. He's raised by his brother and sister, and as a result, he learned to use YouTube before he learned to read, which I don't understand how you can find the Potter Puppets video when you can't read, but he could. And so he's watching these videos, and I asked him to eject the DVD out of the computer. He's like, "Well," I said, "Get the DVD, your mom needs it." He goes, "Huh?" And I finally leaned over, and I ejected the DVD out of the computer, and he goes, "There's a DVD in there?" He had no idea that computers
There's physical media in there?
And so when you ask him what cloud computing is, he probably wouldn't actually know the term because all computing he does is cloud computing.
That's very interesting.
That's a very good point.
And this kid's a dork, obviously, like his father. When he grows up and becomes the CIO of some organization, he's not going to be sitting there going, "Yeah, now I'm going to start installing computers and building out data centers and building firewalls." He's going to expect everything to come off the net and come out of the cloud. And that's really what I think what's so fascinating about cloud infrastructure and SaaS now is we're taking this that was used to get the Potter Puppet videos, and we're making it a tool that people can really use to solve business problems. And that's what's new. When people say cloud's been around for 15 years, it has. But the idea of being able to get a server on a cloud in 5 minutes flat and get it anywhere. I mean, you can configure almost anybody's cloud service off your iPhone in a coffee shop now. You can spin up a brand new server in a coffee shop at any point in time you want because of the APIs you can use to get in there. this is new and very interesting. Now we need to make sure someone does that, doesn't go put the corporate financials on that server they just spun up and share it with everybody else in the coffee shop. That's kind of the next evolution for us as a business perspective. But really, with the cloud and SaaS, it's really still about how you can use the internet for business purposes.
Well, really quick, jumping back over to you, Eugene, any final thoughts from you on where things are going? Where are things going specifically for grid dynamics?
Sorry, say it again.
Sorry, I said any final thoughts from you in terms of where cloud is going, or more specifically where things are going for grid dynamics?
Yeah, we see in grid dynamics, we see more and more traction from our clients and prospects to implement different cloud computing solutions. Mm-hmm. And to say about where cloud is going in general, I see a lot of traction to move some data in the cloud, meaning that it would be really interesting to put not only the raw processing power in the cloud and not only some basic storage capabilities in the cloud, but to put some useful data feeds in the cloud, meaning that any application which you write and which runs in cloud computing environment can access to such data as, for example, weather feeds, market feeds, mm-hmm. Different historical information, a lot of kind of business facts and everything else which you can imagine. And Google has a very good trend to move more and more information being accessible for different programmers to write application again. Mm-hmm. So this is a very interesting trend which I see in the cloud, and I believe that the cloud providers of the future will integrate not only raw processing and storage capabilities in the cloud, but also some meaningful data sets which will be available for people which run the applications in the cloud.
Well, thank you, Eugene. I think I'm hearing something again, Mark. Do you?
I think you may be right.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think I may hear some
Or maybe
Balkans.
I just have, ringing in my ears.
Once again, I feel my voice growing deeper. My superpowers are returning. That's because I'm talking about Storm on Demand. Storm on Demand. That's right, we have our little guys now. Infrastructure as a service, cloud computing platform, powerful enough to replace dedicated servers. A proprietary cloud platform, Storm on Demand, was designed by Liquid Web, one of the largest web hosting providers with over 12 years of experience. That's more than I was when I used to play with things like that. Anyway. So Storm on Demand is easier to use and less expensive than Amazon EC2. Storm on Demand features include server setup in minutes, easy scaling, backup, and restoration capabilities, and pay-as-you-go utility-style billing. Storm on Demand options include cPanel, Fantastico, Ubuntu, Debian, CentOS, fully managed servers, private networking, and much, much more. And I have a shirt that says Storm on Demand. Thank you, Storm on Demand, once again, for your generous sponsorship.
We got to have fun on this show.
We really do.
We have to. You guys have to put up with us. Thank you for doing that. Some final announcements. We're going to be featuring a product of the week.
We are. Actually, it's going to be a new segment starting next week.
New segment starting next week. So if you have a SaaS product or not, it
has to be a cloud product.
It has to be a cloud product, of course. It is a cloud show after all.
Come in here with your Erector set or something. It has to be a cloud product.
So, there's that. And then also, of course, we're always looking for guests, particularly folks from your infrastructure team. Definitely, got our feelers out for that.
Yeah, we like to feature the folks too. The other thing we like to tell people is we love to feature your product. The product manager in particular is the one person we're most interested in speaking with, or the CEO. So both those people we feel represent the product best. So
people know the
if you do have something and you want to tell us about it, pitch, P-I-T-C-H, at thisweekend.com is the place to send it. That'll go directly to Amanda, myself, and a few other folks. So pitch at thisweekend.com. That actually goes for any of our shows if you have an idea for a guest or something like that, or an application, or even a show. So pitch at, I almost said Storm on Demand. Not pitch at Storm on Demand. Pitch at thisweekend.com is the place to send it in. So.
And one other fun little tidbit I want to throw out there, we've been discussing how we can involve all of you that much more in the show. So we're going to start crowdsourcing our show notes. So all of these cheat sheets that we have on our screen, we're going to post them ahead of time. So if you have anything you want to add, any questions for our guests. We'll be able to do that online before the show.
Yeah, you'll be able to see it beforehand.
Exactly.
So if you want to add to it, you think there's something that actually you think is bad.
Because we want your involvement.
Yeah.
So make sure you keep your eyes open for that, because we will be crowdsourcing our notes fairly soon. So we should probably start wrapping up. I would like to thank our guests, Treb Ryan, the CEO of OpSource. Thank you for joining us today. Treb, is there a Twitter handle or a website you would like anyone to visit for OpSource?
Yeah, go to blogs.opsource.net. You'll get mine in there. Is that where do I have to go though to get one of those Storm T-shirts?
Oh, you want a Storm T-shirt? I think we could arrange
the guests
that.
of the show, you'll get more guests if you get Storm T-shirts, I think.
Yeah, well, apparently there's only 5. They made a couple for us. So actually,
Yeah.
the person who designed the logo actually complained to me on Twitter that they don't even have one themselves. So
I'll wear it to my next conference if they send one to me.
will you
Did you hear that,
use the voice
Storm?
as well?
It has
Yeah.
to be Storm on Demand.
Yeah, Storm on Demand.
Yeah, so if you say, we'll have to practice that. But anyway, I'm sure they'd be happy to help you out.
So thanks again for joining us, and also Eugene Steinberg, the CTO of Grid Dynamics. Thank you so much for joining us. Is there a Twitter handle or a website you would like people to go to?
Well, thank you for calling me. Basically, go to griddynamics.com, see our blog,
Okay.
follow us on Twitter.
And what's the Twitter handle?
Grid Dynamics.
Grid Dynamics on Twitter as well. And of course, you can follow us on Twitter as well, TWI Cloud Comp,
Yep.
Tweet Cloud Comp, and make sure you're checking out the discussion around the show. But finally, we've got to thank our sponsors. We've got Verticore, and we have Storm on Demand.
Yeah, and I want to make sure Verticore doesn't get lost in all the Storm on Demand, because we love them too. And
Exactly.
they host this weekend. I couldn't be more happy with them. So thank you once again.
So of course, please, if you can, thank them on Twitter. Tell them, that you've been hearing about them on our show, and they're really what makes this possible. So please make sure that you thank our sponsors and Verticore, Storm on Demand.
Thank you.
And of course, my co-host, Mark Jeffrey.
Oh, my pleasure. I got to be every week.
So every week, Wednesday, 3 p.m. Pacific time, make sure you catch us here. I'm Amanda Coulong, This Week in Cloud Computing.